I'm going over now some of my cranial videos, getting my course ready. I've always had a passion of cranial movements. My son had Haemophilus influenza, which landed in his ethmoids, septoids, base of the brain, around the eyes, in all of his sinuses. He had significant sinusitis. With that, he's had 5 sinus surgeries, he's had 5 mouth surgeries, 3 sets of ear tubes, a benign tumor in the base, in between the mastoids and the occipital. So that alone, just of his surgeries, he's had 14 head surgeries. Cranial movements, viscosity rates of mucosal flow, all of those kind of things come into play for your development. So in the first cranial course, which is about to launch, the head and sutures, will be going into not only techniques for cranial movements, but going off of transitional milestones. I don't know if you realize that most of the head fuses, let's say, of the soft spots, etc., by 18 months. Now the skull doesn't totally fuse until the age of 20. But by 18 months, really most of your movement, your initial foundational movement vocabulary needs to be established. Those are your developmental milestones. This is why I firmly believe, like say coming to sitting, really should happen between 6.5 to 7 months. Not adjusted, but cranial. Why? Because of your anterior soft spot, your fontanel, you want that lightness to come up to sitting, let's say. So we will be covering transitional milestones. You'll be learning specific cranial applications, movement applications, as well as combinations, because with this course, again, we'll be going into, let's say, the mastoid pivot into the coronal suture. This is for the exterior facial bones. So I like to say, WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. We'll be dealing with the exterior bones. And my next class, then we will be going into the nasal and ear. So we'll be going into the facial bones. And then the third segment of the cranial series, there's 5 at the moment, we'll be going into the palate. So the palatines, obviously mandible, going into the depth of the mouth. Then we'll be going into one of the first that I have for movement lessons for muscle and fascia tissue within the skull region. And then we're going to end up the series going into trauma. Trauma being from fetal to birth to environmental. That can happen to the head shape and how to work with it. It's a very extensive course with functional anatomy. We'll be teaching anatomy, but more on a movement function basis, and going into, again, the functions of the sutures, functions of the cranial bones, the exterior cranial bones. Then we'll be going into transitional milestones, and then individual application to touch and movement, and then going into combinations, again, of suture cranial movements to go with it. It is a full and complete course, including with books. You do not have to know movement lesson to appreciate the course. You do not have to know anatomy to appreciate the course. So the course is really designed for a parent to help a child, but at the same time for a professional to work with a new set of cranial movements to help all sorts of movements with your child. And we're with adults. I do say child a lot because primarily I would say 60% of what I do is for children, but I do mean, again, this course can be applied to an 89-year-old, let's say, that's just maybe had a stroke and the head is too heavy and you have to manipulate the gray matter into the exterior movements, things that we'll be covering in the Movement Lesson Cranial series. Thank you.